The night I discovered the affair, I realized that evidence doesn't just expose lies, it builds the path to justice. My name is Emerson Lawson, and I'm 37 years old. Each morning, I wake before dawn to pack lunches and check homework folders while my children sleep down the hall. I trusted my wife Taryn Lawson with every detail of our lives, from shared calendars to bedtime routines, until her deception shattered that foundation. My hands didn't shake when I found the hotel receipt. I simply started a new spreadsheet. The timestamps, locations, and messages created an airtight case that even she couldn't deny. I'm not here for revenge. I'm here because sometimes protection requires proof, and justice demands more than angry words. My children deserve better than a father who loses control when trust fails. But let me start from the beginning. The first red flag was a hotel charge from the Westbrook Inn. 30 minutes from our house, but 5 minutes from Taryn's Tuesday yoga class. My stomach tightened as I pulled up our shared location history. The blue dots told their own story. Weekly visits to that same hotel. Perfectly timed during my late meetings. Remember when phones were just phones? I do. Back when trust meant believing someone's words, not checking their digital footprints. But there it was on our synced tablet. Messages to someone saved only as G, planning meetups while I read bedtime stories to our kids. I printed everything. Bank statements, location logs, text threads. The evidence felt heavy in my hands as I waited at the kitchen island that evening, each page arranged in chronological order. The granite counter still held traces of dinner, pasta night, the kids' favorite. A grocery list magnet held our family photo to the fridge, all smiles from last summer's beach trip. Taryn breezed in around 8, dropping her gym bag by the door. The kids asleep? Since 7:30. I kept my voice steady. We need to talk. She grabbed a mug from the cabinet, barely glancing my way. Can it wait? I'm beat from yoga. I slid the hotel receipt across the counter. Or from meeting G at the Westbrook. The mug froze halfway to her lips. For just a second, I saw panic flash across her face before it hardened into something else, something cold. You went through my things? Her laugh was sharp, wrong. That's pathetic, Em. I didn't have to go through anything. It was all right there on our shared accounts. I spread out the location maps, the message logs. I just want honesty, Taryn. That's all I'm asking for. She set the mug down hard enough to slosh coffee onto the printouts. You want honesty? Fine. I'm suffocating here, playing happy family while you obsess over schedules and receipts. At least Gary knows how to make me feel alive. Gary. So that's what G stood for. How long? I asked. Long enough to know he'd never pull this detective bullshit. She grabbed her phone, fingers flying over the screen. I'm calling him right now. Let him hear how crazy you're being. The kids are sleeping, I reminded her, but she was already dialing. When no one answered, something snapped. She hurled the phone at me. I ducked as it smashed against the backsplash. The mug followed, shattering near my head. Coffee and ceramics sprayed across the counter. This is your fault. She lunged forward, shoving me hard against the edge of the island. Pain blazed across my shoulder. You and your stupid proof. In that moment, watching her eyes go wild, I knew this wasn't just about an affair anymore. This was dangerous. The kids were sleeping just down the hall, innocent and unaware. What if they woke up? What if they saw their mother like this? I stepped back, one hand raised. I'm taking the kids to Kurt's place tonight. Don't you dare! Her voice trembled with rage, but I was already moving toward their rooms, my mind clear despite the throbbing in my shoulder. Sometimes the bravest thing isn't standing your ground. It's knowing when to walk away. The kids barely stirred when I carried them to Kurt's house, still in their pajamas, clutching the stuffed animals they couldn't sleep without. My son's dragon and my daughter's worn rabbit, familiar comfort on an unfamiliar night. Kurt opened his door before I could knock, taking in the scene with one glance. "Guest room's ready," he said, no questions asked. That's Kurt, solid as oak, especially in a crisis. You know where everything is. I settled them in Kurt's spare bedroom, tucking the covers around their sleeping forms. For a moment, I just watched them breathe, remembering nights when they were infants, and I'd do the same thing, marveling at how perfectly peaceful they looked. Now that peace felt fragile, something I had to fight to protect. "They'll be safe here," Kurt said from the doorway. "Make your calls." The non-emergency dispatcher was efficient, logging my report with professional detachment. Within 45 minutes, Detective Luis Alveo's cruiser pulled up to my house, lights off to avoid disturbing the neighbors. Kurt stood watch over the kids while I walked back home to meet him. "Mr. Lawson?" Alveo's handshake was firm, his eyes sharp and assessing. "Let's document everything while it's fresh." Under the bright foyer lights, he photographed my shoulder, already darkening where it had hit the island's edge. The kitchen was exactly as we'd left it. Shattered ceramic, spilled coffee, scattered papers bearing witness to the moment everything changed. "Tell me what happened," Alveo said, notepad ready. "Start with when you first discovered the affair." I walked him through it chronologically. The hotel charges, location history, messages. Each printout went into an evidence envelope, each digital record carefully noted. When I described Taryn's reaction, the phone, the mug, the shove, Alveo's pen moved steadily across the page. "You did the right thing," he said, photographing the broken mug. "Leaving with the children, calling us, preserving evidence. Most people don't think this clearly in crisis." Kurt had followed us over, standing quietly in the doorway. "I saw the whole family at dinner last weekend," he offered. "Everything seemed normal then, but I'll testify about tonight. The kids arriving, Emerson's injury, all of it." Alveo nodded, adding Kurt's statement to his notes. The detective's movements were precise, methodical, like he was assembling pieces of a puzzle he'd seen too many times before. "Listen carefully," Alveo said, closing his notepad. "This isn't just about infidelity anymore. The moment she chose violence, everything changed. Stay alert. Document any contact. If she shows up at your neighbor's house, call 911 immediately." I felt the weight of his words settle onto my shoulders, heavier than any bruise. This was really happening. I wasn't just a husband who'd discovered betrayal. I was a father building a case to protect his children. "Thank you, Detective," I said, watching him seal the last evidence envelope. Walking back to Kurt's house, the night air felt different somehow. Behind me, my home stood dark and silent. Ahead, a single lamp glowed in Kurt's guest room window, keeping watch over my sleeping children. Each step marked the distance between what I'd believed my life to be and what it had become. Morning hit like a physical weight. I'd barely slept on Kurt's couch, checking on the kids every hour until dawn painted his living room gray. We managed our usual routine: breakfast, teeth brushing, clothes, but everything felt mechanical, like going through the motions of normal life while walking underwater. The daycare parking lot was half full when we pulled in. Through the windshield, I watched other parents walking hand in hand with their children, laughing about forgotten lunchboxes or missing socks. Just yesterday, I'd been one of them. Amazing how fast your world can flip upside down. I helped my daughter unbuckle her car seat, my son already reaching for his backpack, when I caught movement in my peripheral vision. Taryn emerged from between two parked cars, and my chest tightened. She looked nothing like the woman who'd thrown that mug last night. Her makeup was perfect, her eyes wide and glistening. "Kids, go on inside with Mrs. Martinez," I said quietly, as the teaching assistant approached. I'd texted the daycare director at dawn, explaining the situation. They were expecting us. The moment the children were out of earshot, Taryn's face crumpled. "How could you do this to us?" Her voice trembled. "Taking them to Kurt's in the middle of the night? Calling the police? You're scaring them." I kept my distance, conscious of the other parents walking past. Some slowed down, sensing the tension. "I'm protecting them," I said evenly. "You made that necessary when you became violent." "Violent?" She laughed, but it sounded wrong, shrill and desperate. "It was one stupid argument. You're completely overreacting." She stepped closer, lowering her voice. "We can fix this, Em. Just drop the police report. Come home. We'll talk everything through. Remember when we first dated? How she'd touch my arm when making a point?" She reached for me now with that same gesture, but I saw it differently. Calculated, practiced, a move in a game I was finally learning to recognize. "No." I stepped back. What happened last night wasn't an argument. It was assault. And until I know our children are safe, there's nothing to discuss. Her tears vanished like they'd never existed. "You think you can keep my children from me? I'm their mother." "I think you should talk to a lawyer," I said, maintaining eye contact. "And any communication about the kids needs to be in writing from now on." She stormed off toward her car, heels clicking against the asphalt. I waited until she drove away before letting out a long breath. My phone buzzed, probably Kurt checking in. But when I looked at the screen, my blood ran cold. It was an automated notification from the school's parent portal. "New authorized pickup added. Gregory Reeves." I'd never heard that name in my life. The timestamp showed 6:47 a.m., less than an hour ago. I clicked through to the settings page, where emergency contacts and approved pickup persons were listed. There was the new entry, complete with phone number and address, authorized with what appeared to be my electronic signature. My fingers tightened around the phone. First violence, then manipulation, now forgery. Taryn wasn't just trying to control the narrative. She was creating alternate access to our children without my knowledge or consent. I settled at Kurt's kitchen table after dropping the kids at daycare, my laptop open, and a fresh coffee growing cold beside me. The house was quiet. Kurt had taken the morning off work, but was keeping his distance, giving me space while staying within earshot if I needed him. Opening my banking app, I started with the joint account statements. Taryn and I had always shared everything financial, tracking every dollar with shared spreadsheets. That transparency felt like mockery now. I scrolled through the transactions, marking anything unusual in yellow. A pattern emerged. Cash withdrawals, always between $300 and $500. Always from the same ATM on Miller Street. The address nagged at me. I pulled up Google Maps, and there it was. The ATM sat directly across from the Pines, a complex of short-term furnished rentals. My throat tightened as I remembered a camping trip last summer, the smell of pine needles and wood smoke. How Taryn had insisted on staying behind for work commitments. "Need anything?" Kurt appeared in the doorway, careful to announce his presence. I shook my head. "Just piecing things together." I gestured at my screen. "Found some interesting withdrawals. Document everything," he said quietly. "Every receipt, every text." The home security app was next. We'd installed cameras last year. Doorbell, garage, backyard. I'd never thought to check the logs until now. The midnight timestamps jumped out immediately. 12:14 a.m., 12:37 a.m., 12:22 a.m. Taryn, slipping out while I slept, returning hours later. The footage showed her checking her phone, always dressed carefully despite the hour. My fingers moved mechanically, downloading clips, saving them to a dedicated folder. Each file felt like another brick in a wall I never wanted to build. The tablet yielded the next revelation. I was searching through our cloud storage when an email auto-populated in the search bar. hidden.sunshine222@gmail.com. I didn't recognize it, but the tablet did. It had been logged in recently. The inbox contained hundreds of messages, all to a contact saved only as G. Hotel confirmations, photos, plans for meetings disguised as work events, a second phone number I'd never seen before. "I'm taking the kids to the park after lunch," Kurt said, passing through again. "Give you some time to focus." I nodded gratefully. "Thanks." I need to organize all this. The empty binder sat accusingly on the table. I started filling it methodically. Bank statements, security logs, email records, photos of my bruised shoulder. Each page represented another thread in a web of deception so intricate it must have taken months, maybe years, to weave. The familiar scent of my coffee triggered a memory. Sunday mornings at our kitchen table, planning the week ahead. Taryn's hand on mine as we synchronized our calendars. The trust in those moments felt like a cruel joke now. I closed the binder, its weight substantial in my hands. The evidence was undeniable. This wasn't just an affair or a momentary lapse. This was calculated, coordinated deceit, aimed at maintaining two separate lives while keeping me in the dark. Every discovery reinforced what I'd been trying to avoid admitting. I needed more than private documentation. These records had to become official before they could protect us. Through Kurt's window, I watched the afternoon sun cast shadows across his driveway. Somewhere in the house, I heard him helping the kids get ready for the park, their voices carrying that innocent excitement that children somehow maintain even when their world is shifting. I traced the binder's edges with my fingertips, knowing that its contents would soon change everything. The courthouse steps felt steeper than usual as I climbed them the next morning, Kurt walking steadily beside me. The binder weighed heavy in my messenger bag, each page inside representing another crack in the foundation of what I'd thought was an unshakable marriage. "You've got this," Kurt said quietly as we approached the clerk's window. "Everything's organized just like they asked for." The clerk, a woman with kind eyes and efficient movements, took my paperwork with practiced hands. "Protective order application?" She began separating the documents into relevant stacks. I nodded, sliding the binder across the counter. "I have supporting evidence," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "Photos, financial records, security footage, everything's dated and labeled." She thumbed through the tabs, nodding approvingly at the organization. The sound of papers being stamped punctuated the quiet morning air of the courthouse. Each thump felt like another door closing on my old life, but maybe opening to something safer. Kurt stayed with me through the filing process, a solid presence at my shoulder while I answered the clerk's questions. Yes, there had been physical violence. Yes, I feared for my children's safety. No, this wasn't the first incident. The memory of morning coffee and shared calendars tried to surface, but I pushed it away. Those moments belonged to a different reality now. Detective Alveo arrived as we finished with the clerk. He'd agreed to meet us here after I'd texted him about the new evidence I'd uncovered. We settled into a small conference room, the kind with uncomfortable chairs and fluorescent lighting that made everything feel somehow both official and surreal. "Walk me through what you found," Alveo said, opening the binder. I explained each section methodically. The ATM withdrawals near the Pines, the midnight security footage, the hidden email account. Alveo's expression remained professional, but I caught the slight narrowing of his eyes when I mentioned the unauthorized school pickup edition. "The chain of evidence is solid," he confirmed, closing the binder. "You've documented everything properly, maintained clear timestamps. This will hold up." He leaned forward, his tone shifting from professional to urgent. "But you need to understand something crucial, Mr. Lawson. You have 72 hours to file for temporary custody." My stomach dropped. 72 hours. After that, jurisdiction gets complicated. She could file in another county, claim primary residence elsewhere based on those rental records you found. It would create legal hurdles we don't want to deal with. Kurt's hand landed on my shoulder as I absorbed this new pressure. 3 days. Just 3 days to potentially determine my children's safety. "The protective order helps," Alveo continued, "but custody is separate. The clock's already ticking." I gathered the stamped paperwork with hands that didn't quite feel like my own. The fluorescent lights seemed harsher now, casting sharp shadows across the conference room table. 72 hours suddenly felt like nothing. A breath, a blink, a handful of heartbeats to secure my children's future. Walking out of the courthouse, I held the documents against my chest like a shield. The morning sun hit my face, but I barely felt its warmth. All I could feel was time slipping away, each second carrying me closer to a deadline I couldn't afford to miss. The afternoon sun slanted through my windshield as I pulled away from the courthouse. Kurt had stayed behind to talk with Detective Alveo, giving me space I didn't know I needed, until I was alone in my car. Two bright lunchboxes sat on the passenger seat, one red, one blue, covered in superhero stickers and small fingerprints. I'd packed them mechanically this morning. Turkey sandwiches cut into triangles, apple slices, those little cookies they loved. You think you know yourself until life strips away every certainty. Then you're just a man in a car, staring at lunchboxes while your hands shake on the steering wheel. The traffic light turned red, and something inside me finally cracked. Tears blurred the intersection into a smear of colors. I pulled into an empty church parking lot, put the car in park, and let out a breath that felt like it had been held for days. Remember walking them to the swing set last summer? The crunch of wood chips under their sneakers, their delighted shrieks as they soared higher. I'd stood behind them, pushing gently, while Taryn took pictures from the bench. All of it felt like a lie now. "I'm afraid," I whispered to the empty car. The admission scraped my throat raw. I'm so damn afraid. Not of Taryn's rage or the legal battle ahead, though both terrified me. No, this was deeper. The primal fear of a father who might fail to protect his children, who might lose them to someone willing to forge school documents and stage injuries, someone who saw them as leverage instead of little souls who needed stability. My hands trembled as I reached for the lunch boxes, running my thumb over a Batman sticker starting to peel at one corner. I'd have to replace it soon. Such a small thing, but it mattered. Everything mattered now. The tears kept coming, but something else rose with them. A quiet fury, not at Taryn, but at the situation itself, at the idea that fear could make me hesitate when my children needed me to be clear-headed and strong. I took 3 deep breaths, the way I taught them to do when overwhelmed. "Fear doesn't get a vote," I said firmly to my reflection in the rearview mirror. "Not when it comes to keeping them safe." The church bells chimed 3 o'clock. School pickup was in an hour. I wiped my eyes, straightened my shoulders, and started the car. By the time I turned onto Kurt Street, my hands were steady on the wheel. The trembling had settled into something harder, more determined. Let the clock tick down. Let Taryn scheme. I would meet every deadline, document every deception, and build a wall of truth around my children's future. I parked in Kurt's driveway and sat for a moment, looking at his familiar front door. The 2 lunchboxes waited beside me, a reminder of everything worth fighting for. My voice was quiet, but certain as I made a promise to those empty seats. "We're going to be okay." I meant it this time. Fear could ride shotgun if it wanted, but it wouldn't touch the wheel. I had 72 hours to secure my children's safety, and I intended to use every minute. After dinner at Kurt's, I sat in his home office, scrolling through notifications on my phone. The doorbell camera app chirped. Motion detected on my front porch. Probably a delivery person, or... My thumb froze mid-swipe. There was Taryn, pacing in front of our door like an actor marking stage positions. She kept glancing at her phone, then at the camera, as if timing something. The timestamp showed 6:47 p.m. You know that moment when puzzle pieces snap together and reveal a picture you never wanted to see? Taryn suddenly stumbled, caught herself on the railing, then straightened up. She did it again, this time adding a dramatic spin. The third time, she let herself fall completely, landing with calculated awkwardness on the steps. My stomach clenched as she pulled out her phone, fingers flying across the screen. The app's integrated message preview popped up. Perfect spot. Call it in. Say he pushed me. Sent to someone saved only as G. Remember teaching the kids about trust? How I'd told them it was like a promise you keep even when no one's watching. The irony tasted bitter. "Kurt," I called out, my voice steadier than I felt. "I need you to see this." He appeared in the doorway, coffee mug in hand. Together we watched as a man I'd never seen before, presumably G, approached my front door 7 minutes later. The camera caught his face clearly as he reached behind the porch light and retrieved a key I didn't know existed. "Jesus," Kurt whispered. The spare key slid home. G disappeared inside my house like he'd done it before, which I realized with growing nausea he probably had. My hands moved on autopilot. Screen record, save, backup. I created copies on my phone, Kurt's computer, and an external drive. The footage felt radioactive, powerful enough to destroy everything Taryn was planning, but dangerous if mishandled. "This is—" Kurt trailed off, shaking his head. "Proof," I finished, "of conspiracy, breaking and entering, and attempted fraud." The legal terms helped. They turned this nightmare into something concrete, actionable. I opened my email, attaching the video files to messages for both Detective Alvio and my attorney. My finger hovered over send as the reality sank in. My wife hadn't just betrayed our marriage, she was actively plotting to destroy me. The memory of this morning's tears in the car felt distant now. That had been fear of failure. This was different. My chest tightened, but not from anxiety. This was clarity. Cold, sharp clarity. Kurt's hand landed on my shoulder. "Send it," he said quietly. I hit send twice. The progress bars filled slowly, each pixel carrying evidence that would shatter Taryn's schemes. My phone buzzed almost immediately. Detective Alvio's response contained just one word: damning. I stared at that single word, thinking of the spare key hidden behind the porch light. How many times had G used it while I read bedtime stories upstairs? How long had Taryn been planning this performance on our front steps? The doorbell camera chirped again. This time it showed Taryn returning, walking steadily up those same steps she'd practiced falling down. She unlocked the door, not with a hidden spare, but with her key. The key I'd trusted her with. Detective Alvio's one-word response, "damning," glowed on my phone screen. I took a screenshot, adding it to my growing collection of evidence. Kurt brought me fresh coffee while I transformed his dining room table into a war room of documentation. "I need 3 copies of everything," I explained, spreading out papers like dealing cards. "One for the court, one for my attorney, one for backup. Remember those quiet Sunday afternoons when you'd sort through old photos, each one telling its own story? This was different. Each document was a weapon in my arsenal of truth. I worked through the night, my hands steady as I arranged everything chronologically. Bank statements showed the pattern of hotel charges. Location data painted a map of deception. The doorbell footage exposed the staged fall and unauthorized entry. Text messages revealed the conspiracy. Even the school portal's audit log documented Taryn's attempt to add that mystery pickup person. Kurt dozed on his couch, but insisted on staying nearby. "Just in case," he'd said, though neither of us finished that thought. At 3 a.m., my attorney's paralegal emailed detailed instructions for filing emergency custody papers. I'd already filled out most forms, but double-checked every box, every initial. One mistake could cost everything. The weight of what I was doing, legally documenting my wife's betrayal, pressed against my chest like a stone. Sometime around 4 a.m., I found myself staring at an old grocery receipt stuck between bank statements. Simple numbers for milk, bread, juice boxes, the ordinary math of family life that used to make sense. "You okay?" Kurt's voice came from the doorway. "Yeah." I slipped the receipt into a folder marked Household Expenses. Just remembering when receipts were just receipts. Dawn crept in through Kurt's windows as I labeled the last divider tab. 3 identical binders sat before me, each one telling the same unassailable story. My phone buzzed, a reminder that the courthouse opened in an hour. Kurt drove. I couldn't trust my hands, though they'd been rock steady all night. We passed the school where I should have been dropping off the kids. Instead, they were safe at his sister's house, probably just waking up, asking for pancakes. The courthouse steps looked steeper than I remembered from filing the protective order. Morning sun hit the bronze doors, almost blinding. Other people hurried past, lawyers with briefcases, clerks with coffee cups, lives moving forward while mine hung suspended. I checked my watch, 8:47 a.m. The family court clerk had promised to expedite my emergency filing given Detective Alvio's involvement. My attorney would meet me inside. "Whatever happens," Kurt said, "the truth is in those binders." The security line moved quickly. Metal detector, bag check, binders through the X-ray machine. Each step felt ceremonial, like crossing thresholds into a temple of justice. The marble floors echoed under my dress shoes, the good ones I'd bought for client meetings, now carrying me toward a different kind of presentation. 4th floor, family court division. The wooden benches were already filling with other people's crises. My attorney spotted me, nodded at the binders under my arm. I handed her one, kept another close. The wall clock ticked to 9 a.m. A bailiff appeared with a clipboard, and the air seemed to thicken. "Case number FC 2024-0873, he called out. "Emergency custody hearing, Lawson versus Lawson." The courtroom felt smaller than I'd imagined. Detective Alvio sat in the witness box, his posture straight, his words measured, as he walked the judge through each piece of evidence. "The doorbell camera footage is time-stamped and authenticated," he explained, gesturing to the screen where Taryn's rehearsed fall played out in stark clarity. "You can clearly see Mrs. Lawson texting instructions to stage the incident." I watched the judge's expression shift as she viewed the video of G using the hidden key. Her pen moved steadily across her notepad. Years of handling family cases hadn't numbed her to calculated deception. The school pickup form came next. The administrator testified about unauthorized changes, timestamps proving Taryn had altered access protocols without my knowledge or consent. Each document built upon the last, creating an undeniable pattern. Remember that feeling when puzzle pieces finally locked together? The truth was assembling itself in real time. The judge removed her reading glasses, fixing Taryn with a direct stare. "Mrs. Lawson, these actions demonstrate a disturbing pattern of premeditated deception and potential endangerment." Taryn's attorney attempted damage control, but the evidence was insurmountable. The judge's ruling came with crystal clarity. Temporary primary custody granted to me, along with a comprehensive restraining order. All marital accounts frozen pending forensic review. "The court finds clear and convincing evidence of attempted fraud and risk to the minor children," the judge declared. "Mr. Lawson has demonstrated both prudent documentation and appropriate protective measures." The gavel struck. Just like that, the narrative Taryn had tried to write about me shattered against hard facts. That evening, I stood in my garage, installing a solid oak door. Each turn of the screwdriver felt like setting another boundary in place. The fresh wood smell reminded me of building the kids' treehouse, another sanctuary, created with care and purpose. Kurt helped me carry in the last of the children's things from his house, their small shoes lined up neatly by the mat. Sneakers for school, boots for rain, slippers for bedtime. 3 pairs, perfectly arranged. Order restored. "You did it," Kurt said quietly. "We did it," I corrected him. "I wouldn't have made it without backup." In the entryway, I hung our coats on a single hook. My jacket, 2 smaller ones nested beneath it. Such a simple thing, those 3 coats together. But it meant everything. Safety, stability, home. The kids were sleeping upstairs, their first night back in their own beds. I stood in the kitchen, tucking the court papers under a magnetic clip on the fridge. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, school routines to rebuild, emotions to navigate, healing to begin. But tonight, I had my victory. Not just the legal win, though that mattered enormously. The real triumph was in reclaiming our space, in knowing my children would wake up secure in their home, in understanding that truth, properly documented, could defeat even the most calculated deception. I traced my fingers over the new key on my ring. 3 deadbolts, 3 coats, 3 pairs of shoes. The symmetry felt right. Protect first, I whispered to myself. Prove second. Heal last.